Welcome to Mudit Verma's Furthermore podcast. Hey everybody, you do not want to miss this. I am so excited to be with my comedian colleague, Anaïs Lucia. Anaïs is a really awesome comedian. She's performed at the Miami Improv, and she runs a very big platform for comedians that are INFP Myers-Briggs types. If you were to search INFP comedy in YouTube, you would see Anaïs's videos pop up right away. So Anaïs, how are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you for having me. It feels kind of weird to be interviewed because I'm usually the one interviewing people on my podcasts.
Yeah, definitely. No, and I had a blast on your podcast. We went very thoroughly into our INFP life experiences.
Yeah. So I don't know if your viewers know that you're also INFP. So we're both INFPs.
Definitely. Yeah, I believe I have the INFP hashtag in my Twitter, possibly Instagram. And yeah. And for me, like, it's never changed. I've taken the Myers-Briggs 3 times that I can remember, the start of college, the end of college, and during pharmacy school. And it was INFP every single time. So.
Yep. Yeah. Me too.
Awesome.
Always.
Definitely. So tell us about your origin story for comedy. What got you into comedy? Maybe how long you've been doing it, and yeah, tell us about that.
I mean, it kind of started from when I was a kid. It's not like I started doing stand-up comedy when I was a kid, but I've always loved comedies since I was really, really little, because for me, comedy was kind of my escape because I didn't have a very happy childhood. So since I didn't get a lot of smiles and laughter from that, I would escape to comedy. I would watch because I was like, well, I don't feel good, these things aren't making me happy, my situation. So I would watch comedy to have something that will make me laugh and smile. Right. And I have so many VHS tapes, like a lot. Like, hoarders have nothing on me, no, but I do have a lot of VHS tapes because I would record like pretty much everything I would see on TV that was comedic, SNL, Matt TV, Comedy Central presents stand-up shows, improv, Whose Line Is It Anyway, sitcoms, just anything that would make me laugh, I would record it, because just when I was feeling sad, I just wanted to be able to like put it on and watch it. I kind of got introduced to stand-up when I was younger, and I never really thought of doing it. And then I moved to Hollywood, LA in 2015. So I was a little older. I kind of thought maybe I would like to try it, be cool. Because I did, I do act and I do hosting as well. But I never thought of like stand-up. I don't know. It just seemed a little too, it was a little scary for sure. And then I met other stand-up comedians. I saw them doing it and I was like, okay. I actually just started doing it kind of within like the last year, because I was like, hey, like, why not, YOLO. You only live once.
Yeah.
And I had jokes written on my phone. Like, sometimes if I would say something funny that would make people laugh, I would kind of write it down. Or if I had a funny thought and I was like, maybe this could be good for stand-up, like a rant or something, I would just write it down on my phone. So I had stuff written down, and then I just kind of started trying to develop it, doing open mics, took some classes. I haven't been doing it for that long though.
Got you. Yeah. I mean, I've only been doing it for a little over a year. And I think I have a similar method where, for me, if something occurs to me, then I quickly jot it down in my phone. I'm trying to make more time and be more disciplined with like deeper writing, but that's been a bit of a challenge. So would you agree, like, or would you have like the same method of like, if something occurs to you, quickly jot it down and maybe work on it while on stage? Or do you have like carved out time for deeper writing? What's that process like?
I definitely write it down, because one reason, is because I'm gonna forget it, just because I know how I am. So I'm like, if I don't write it down, I am gonna forget it. It's just my mind. I've never been able to work where I've kind of have a hard time in like office settings or classroom where they're like, this is your time, right? My mind is not creative that way. I've found, for me, I'm most creative last minute, so procrastinating, and I'm also more creative when I'm relaxed. And by relaxed, I don't mean laying on my bed. I mean when I'm not thinking about what I'm supposed to be doing. I don't set time to write jokes. For me, that doesn't work. and I've had a hard time in school, and they're like, okay, write about this thing, you have this time to write. And because I always realize that I always think of ideas, like my better ideas, when I'm doing something else, when I'm dancing or working out or showering. I come up with so many ideas in the shower, and I was like, why is that? Why in the shower all the time? And because you're relaxed, your body's relaxed. Usually it's kind of like you're not really stressed in the shower. Right. Usually people are relaxed in the shower. And I was like, okay, that makes sense, you know, because I don't have the pressure of like I need to write some things. So that's why I would come up with a lot of things. And also, honestly, I don't condone this, but for me it does work sometimes. If I have a drink of like a glass of wine, because again, it relaxes me. So I found that's what works for me. Is the key is just to relax myself, even through showering or a glass of wine or going for a walk, right. You know, dancing, playing music, anything that's not writing jokes usually helps me write jokes, because my mind kind of wanders. There's not really the pressure because I'm doing something else, and I'll be like, oh shoot, and then I try to have something nearby, either my phone or somewhere where in case when the idea happens I can write it down. Right. I don't really like sit down and like, okay, I'm gonna be deep right now. I just kind of, what I do is like I kind of, I guess, talk to myself in a way. Like I'll pretend I'm talking to somebody about this topic, and then just kind of let it all out, just blah, 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 just like I'm talking to them. And then eventually I'll say something, I'm like, okay, that's kind of funny, I'll write it down, like right. Kind of include that and kind of turn it into a joke. You have to be alone so people don't think you're crazy, like, okay, you're talking to yourself. And I do want to share a tip for something that I learned this weekend. I was doing like a workshop, not for comedy, but just more using your strengths, and it was for NF types. So it was Myers-Briggs kind of focused. So everyone was ENFP, INFJ, INFP. So it was really cool, like, to be around those people. But, you know, big thing with NF types, especially INFPs and ENFPs, is procrastination. And I definitely fit that. And it was just really interesting the way they kind of showed you to kind of use it as a strength. They were like, okay, so if you know that you procrastinate, sorry, I promise I'm sober, but like if you know you procrastinate, instead of trying to make yourself, you know, do this thing a week ahead of time, if you know you're going to procrastinate on it, just schedule it like an hour before, whenever, you know, like right before, because if you know that's how you work best, and do the other things that you're not going to procrastinate on, do those before, and that way you don't feel guilty for like a whole week, like, oh my gosh, I'm not getting this done, blah blah blah. When you just schedule your procrastination, like, this is gonna be my time, like. And I was like, oh my gosh, I wish I would have known this. Like, I would have helped make me feel less bad about my procrastination. But I thought it was a really cool way to think about it and not feel so bad about it. It's just like, that's just a different way of working. So. Like
simply accepting it and then scheduling it. And that's how you best manage your way of getting things done. I think that's really empowering. I think that's very effective. So can you talk about like the type of content you typically talk about on stage? Is there a common theme of like your jokes and your bits?
There are certain things I would like to talk about, but I took a few workshops on like clean comedy, getting booked and stuff like that. So I'm trying to stay more clean, because it increases your chances of getting booked in maybe colleges, maybe a cruise or something. So I don't do any cussing, and also that's just my authentic self. I don't really cuss. Like, I'm just not that kind of person. If you cuss, it's fine. I just don't. So it's not in my comedy. I definitely just try to be authentic. Just talk, like, if something funny happens to me or something has happened to me, I'll be like, oh, it's a funny story. So everything I say is genuine. I don't make things up. I might exaggerate, you know, for the joke, for the punchline, but like, I don't lie. I've done sets and people are like, is that true? And I'm like, yeah. Like, I didn't make that up. But I know some comedians will talk about having a wife or something like that, and they're not even married. Like, they've never been married. I'm like, why would you do that? And I think it's also like, I mean, bringing it back to Myers-Briggs, like, it's an INFP thing too. Like, we generally want to be we're about authenticity and staying true to ourselves. So it just doesn't feel right you know, and I feel like people can tell, at least I think I can tell when someone's lying or not being genuine. And I want to stay true to myself. I prefer other people to stay true to themselves. I think about my jokes like if I write something and I'm just like, okay, can anyone else tell this joke? And if somebody else can tell it, then I'm like, maybe it's not the best one. Like, I still think it's funny, but it might not be the best thing. But like things about my family, I do talk about my not so great childhood, because I know a lot of people also can kind of relate to that. So, you know, those stories about my family and you know, my childhood, like other people can, you know, relate in terms of they didn't have a good childhood, but the specific stories are just specific to me. Like nobody else can say those jokes. So I think that's a kind of a good way to think about it. And I feel like the more authentic and true to yourself you are, the more memorable you are.
I relate. I mean, first off, like being clean in comedy, it definitely is an effective way to get booked. And I think like it's also it has like an internal backup plan. Like if you go to a gig and there happens to be kids or something, and the audience, like what you might have been expecting, like the general, maybe it's like more family friendly than you thought, then it's like, well, you know, if your material's cleaner on baseline, then it works well. And I also strongly relate with this authentic self, because I have always struggled, especially with like certain career like changes where I had to be one person in one role and another person in another role. I mean, I would try my best to manage that. And I understand like a corporate environment has different expectations than maybe a family environment versus friends, etc. But for me, it's just my energy is more like stable, and my like stress and anxiety are lower if I'm able to kind of carry and be like the same authentic self in most settings, just personally. And so I'm just like better able to kind of interact and cope with the world if I can keep it like streamlined and simple.
Topic I did talk about, which I kind of wanted to mention because I think it's important, is like mental health, because I do deal with like mental health issues, and I think it's really important to kind of be more open and talk about it and not feel ashamed. Like if you do have mental health issues, if you go to therapy, I think that's great, and people shouldn't be ashamed of it. So I kind of want to encourage people, hopefully if I can kind of talk about it and joke about it, that like it's normal. Like I feel like going to see a therapist should be just as normal as like seeing a doctor. Like you shouldn't, like people shouldn't be like, oh, you want therapy? Oh my god. Like, oh, it's just like, okay, whatever, you know. That's kind of how it should be. You know,
like just normal without any kind of disruptive like reaction, like just like seeing a doctor for any other ailment. And I agree, absolutely. In fact, the biggest aspect of my life outside of comedy is I do write articles for mental health advocacy. I struggle, though, to incorporate it in my comedy. How do you bring like mental health to your comedy? Is that process different, or how's that work?
It's a little scary, you know, because you're being pretty vulnerable and you don't know how people are going to receive it. But I kind of start off usually, you know, with kind of what caused a lot of it, which is my childhood. So always kind of more like, okay, they kind of understand like how it happened, you know. I'm depending on like the set time and everything like that. So I usually will start with like my childhood. You don't really feel like they want to talk about mental health issues, but you kind of have to just kind of be confident and do it, and hopefully somebody will relate. That's kind of my hope, even if they don't tell me. Like I'm hoping maybe somebody will watch and be like, okay, like there's someone I can relate to. And I did like a, you know, all-female show a couple weeks ago here in Miami, and I talked about, you know, my childhood and mental health and everything, and one of the comedians was like, oh, I love your stuff, it's really relatable. One of the reasons I actually started doing comedy was to like kind of help me get over some childhood trauma. So that was really, really cool to kind of get that feedback. So at least, you know, hopefully there'll at least be one person, but you just kind of have to be definitely like, just kind of believe in yourself, believe in your material, be confident, definitely, you know, rehearse it, practice it.
We met like online through online comedy. So for me, that like, I think that provided me a space and like several more options to engage with like-minded artists and comedians. What did you have a similar experience with like the Zoom?
I like that. I mean, pretty much all of them I think I did were pretty, you know, supportive and the vibe was, really good. Like the New York one, I think that's the first time we kind of met, I guess virtually, was on one of those, and I liked your stuff. You seem like a cool person, and then I had you on my podcast. It's gonna come out soon, don't worry. Just in case anyone, any Mudit fans out there, but so that was a really cool one. Yeah, I think one of the coolest things is just being able to meet all these comedians from everywhere, because without this, probably would never have met. And right. I got booked on one for London, the London show, and then I think one a Paris one too, and I was like, this is so cool. I wouldn't have met you guys if it wasn't for
I understand that you have a very powerful INFP Anaïs Lucia INFP comedy YouTube channel, but you have a number of other platforms as well, and so could you talk about those? Maybe go over your different social media platforms and YouTube channels.
Let's see, how much time do you guys have? Just be ready. I've always been just a very prolific person. I'm very creative. I put out a lot of content since I was a little kid. I always started I would make movies and everything. I just very creative. I need to put out stuff, and just because we're in a pandemic, that wasn't going to stop me from creating stuff. So yes, I have the INFP comedy channel. It's like a mix. Some videos are more INFP, some are just comedy, some that I have planned to be combined INFP comedy. I did start last year a travel channel, but then it got put on hold because of COVID. But yeah, check it out. It's called Small Town Girl Travels. We're hopefully gonna resume, because that was gonna be my main one. And so anyway, and then during the pandemic, I started 3 podcasts, because that's something I could do from home. So I have a Quarantine Happy Hour, which is the one that you were on. And that one, you can find it, just searching Quarantine Happy Hour podcast on Spotify, Apple, Google, all that stuff. But the video episodes for that are going to be on my INFP comedy channel. And I have my other podcast about relationships. It's called How to Relationship Podcast. And you can find that on Instagram. It has a separate YouTube channel, How to Relationship Podcast, and then just search for it, the audio version as well, where I interview couples to find out how they are able to stay together for so long, because I've never experienced that, and I want to know how it happens, especially in today's culture where I feel people give up really easily, with this Tinder mentality, oh, it's fine, I'll just find someone else. It's people don't really commit really as much anymore. So I kind of want to get in touch with people who are able to do that. And then my other one is called Musecast, and it's about my favorite band, Muse, because first of all, there is not that band has been together for over 20 years, and I looked and there was no podcast about them. I'm like, yes, I can do it. Because I can talk about them forever. When I meet a Muse fan, we can just talk for hours. So I thought, well, that's something I can talk about for a really long time, so why not start a podcast about it? I've had people tell me I'm so glad you started this podcast. There's never, I've never seen anyone do this. And I think out of all my podcasts, that one's probably my most downloaded. It's the Musecast.
I see.
So go niche.
Definitely.
That helps.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Very cool. So the biggest thing that crossed my mind is I have a lot of ambitions as well, and I would like to be as prolific. So I wanted to ask you about how do you kind of stay on top of everything and balanced? I really liked your helpful tip on if you are a procrastinator by nature, simply plan for it. Don't try to change it fundamentally. Just kind of schedule it and then manage it that way. Do you have any advice on maybe the day-to-day, if you have a wellness routine, whether it's about sleep, exercise, or just other productivity advice?
First of all, I think just for everyone, just kind of find what works for you. Just think, when are you most effective? For me, I realize, okay, I get most of my ideas when I'm showering, when I'm not thinking about it. So I include that as part of my process. But if you realize, oh, I'm more creative at night, okay, then that could be your creative time or whatever. If you're more creative or productive during the day, then do that. I'm more of an early bird. I get drained when it's nighttime, my body starts shutting down. So since I know I'm more productive and creative during the day. I get up early, I work out because I feel, just better knowing, okay, I got that out of the way, just I feel it's a good way to start the day. Walk my dog. So, pets, being out in nature, having a walk, that's also a good way to start the day. I do try to, because I have so many things going on, I do kind of try to have a schedule, or just kind of so this is how I do it, because I can't do like regular journals or anything or like planners. I write, like, I have every day here. And this is next week, so I kind of write down the times that I have to do it, and I'm visual, so I kind of have to see like this in big. This is a whole week, so that's one day, and then I'll put the times that I have to do something, because I noticed when I would have planners, because they were closed, I wouldn't see them. Like, I have to have things on the wall and like visual reminders. So if that works better for you, do it that way. So since I know that works better for me, that's how I do it. Since I do 3 podcasts, I try to kind of space them out. Like, I don't start, every season, the seasons for all of them on the same day. That's too much. So I started with one. Then when I got kind of towards the end of the first season of that one, then I started the second one, and then kind of finished the other one. And then once I was finishing that one, then I started the other one. So just kind of space things out. A variety for me, variety is a big thing. As you can tell, I don't just do one thing. So I will kind of try to schedule things, like I said, that are just fun for me, because it helps make me feel less overwhelmed, and I feel breaks are important. So that's one thing I don't like about like this corporate culture, this hustle thing. It's like if you take a break, you're seen as lazy. It's like, no, it's gonna help you be more productive. Like, listen to your body. If I want to take a nap, if I'm feeling tired, I'll take a nap, because what is the point of, like, you're gonna take more time trying to push yourself, trying to push your brain when it's already fried. You're not gonna be as productive. Why don't go refresh yourself, go take a walk, go take a nap, whatever you need to do. Then you're gonna feel so much better. Like, okay. Or sometimes, like, I always have to have music playing pretty much all the time. So I'll have music playing on the radio, and if I hear a song that I really like and I want to dance to, I'll get up and start dancing to it. It's a nice little break. I kind of like, if I had an office, if I had a company, we would schedule dance breaks. Like that would be part of the, like, you wouldn't have to participate, but if you want to, like, I would encourage you. I'd be like, okay, let's dance. It's time to dance, especially if you're like doing desk work and things like that. It's important to kind of schedule a little bit of fun. So that's why I like companies that, like, they'll have massages there, they have nap rooms. I think Google does that, and it just makes sense, because if you're, I just think back at the jobs I've had, the ones where I stayed the longest, it wasn't just jobs that I enjoyed, but it's the ones where I felt like they actually cared about me as an employee. They took care of me. Like, I worked at this really cool place in LA. They had kitchens on every floor, and the kitchens were stacked with snacks, like healthy snacks. And you were like, there was no restrictions. Like, if you felt like you needed to go get a snack, you can go get one. And it was so nice, and I didn't want to leave. So like, if you want your employees to stay and enjoy working there, take care of them. Don't just be like a workhorse, work. Like, who wants to live like that, So definitely. Just, if you're working for yourself, take care of yourself, do what makes you happy. Don't feel guilty. That's something I've had to work on too, is like, just because of my childhood, like, don't feel guilty about doing something that is fun for you. Like, I started painting recently, and that's something I always wanted to try, and it's like super relaxing and therapeutic, and just, make sure to schedule some fun stuff for you.
Definitely. I wish the norm was to really take care of the employees and have wellness as a higher priority, rather than this like thing that you vaguely know about that Google does. Like, I wish that was, the norm.
Exactly. Yeah, that's why if I had a company, I would try to make it the norm too.
Right.
And nobody would want to leave. They would all want to work for me forever. It's like, don't fire employees because they, somebody died in their family and they want to take time off to grieve. Like, that's being a human. That's compassion. Like, don't be like, oh, sorry, you have to go grieve. Guess you're like, we're gonna make things worse by firing you now. Doesn't make sense. And I would encourage people to go on vacation. Like, because you're gonna come back refreshed. Like me, I love traveling, and I enjoyed when I go on vacation, I enjoy it, but I also know that I do like to work. But I'm more willing to come back after I'm like, okay, I'm refreshed, and you just kind of feel it naturally, like, okay, it's time to go back to work. Instead of like, oh, I'm trapped, I'm never gonna be able to go on vacation again. Like, who wants to, that's a horrible existence.
Absolutely. Yeah. Americans have this reputation of being overworked perpetually, you know, and just not reasonable vacation time and time off.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate. Something that really stuck out, I think you're the first person that really spelled out that I've met that prefers things in like plain sight, like with your planner, where you can see it just at a first glance, and that is a huge thing with me. Like, I have my notes on the wall, and I might do that. It looks like you like hand curated your planner, like, you know, to your needs.
Yeah. I found that, like, I memorize. I just, like, things stick with me more if I do it by hand than I can't do with like the planners on Google. Like, doesn't work for me. I have to see it. So yeah, do what works for you.
Right, definitely. And I think, I might take up like making my own planner. Like, do you just take some sheets of paper and kind of staple it?
Just 8x11, 1/2x11, and I draw it. And just because I like drawing anyway, so it's something I can do while I'm watching a movie or something. I'm like, okay, I don't know. It just kind of just the action of doing something with my hand. I like, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, because with planners, like, if that's already done, then it's not really this connection. It's not something that you made and will like commit to for sure the next day. So I think, I'm gonna give that a try. That's really, it's like simple but powerful, and most of my friends just don't get that about me. Like, I really prefer things to be in plain sight, kind of open and at a glance, like I know what's going on type of thing. So
yeah, people think I'm like messy, but but that's just how it works. Like, I'm like, okay, if you don't want me to remember something, I have to see it. It's like, I'm not going to, if you like, that's just how you work. Cool, that works for you, but that doesn't work for me. So
right. Something I wanted to briefly touch on, when I see my therapist, a lot of my issues or struggles that I'm working through today were also informed by my childhood. So for me personally, I think as like an Indian American Hindu, particularly like being forced to be vegetarian was very tough to deal with. Would you be willing to share at whatever level you're comfortable with, maybe like what your childhood was like and maybe how that informs your mental health today?
Well, I was not supported in terms of like my goals and everything like that. So that was really, really hard. I mean, imagine like everything you want to achieve, your family's like, no, like you need to like not do that, you need to do this. And I was very different from my, not just like my immediate family, but like my relatives. I was just like the black sheep. I was creative, and everyone was more like doing traditional careers and things like that. And it was like this constant like, why can't you be like us? Why can't you be like your sister? Why can't you be like there's no acceptance of like, oh, that's who you are, that's awesome, you know? So that's really hard. And it kind of, I do more like, I have kind of better embraced myself, who I am, but it's still a struggle with like having other people accept me. I feel like it's hard because I'm so used to not being accepted, and I'm used to people wanting me to change that. When somebody does actually like me for who I am, not romantically, but just in general, they enjoy my company or whatever, sometimes I don't believe it, because I'm like, I'm used to not being accepted. So I'm like, okay, do they actually like genuinely like me as a person, or they're just saying that because they want something out of me? So that's something I'm working on for sure. And just be like confidence as well. I have a hard time. And also I think it's like an INFP thing too, like just talking about myself like in a confident way, you know, talking about things that I've accomplished. Because when I was younger, if I got an award or something, because I was a pretty good student, so if I got some kind of award or any accomplishment and I would just mention it, I wasn't like showing off, but just even like mentioning it, my family was like, stop showing off. So I learned like, I guess I'm not supposed to talk about anything I accomplished. To me, like I learned that equals bad. Like talking about something you accomplished, that's bad. So then now it's like hard. And then especially like if I go on an audition, or if you do an interview with like an agent, you're supposed to like kind of talk about your accomplishments and just kind of talk yourself up, but like not lie about yourself obviously, but like just like be confident. But sometimes I won't mention things because like I'm used to kind of not talking about it, so I'll like just forget about something I did, and I'm like, oh, I should have mentioned that. But I've gotten feedback where they'll get to know me later and they're like, why didn't you mention that? That's like a pretty cool thing you did. I'm like, oh, I'm used to like thinking that talking about your accomplishments is bad. So I'm still working on like, because I also don't like arrogant people. So I don't want to come off as arrogant. So I feel I'm still working on kind of striking that balance of like, okay, being confident but not arrogant, because I feel like I either come off usually like too down on myself, or I feel like maybe arrogant. I don't know if I do, but I'm just scared of coming off arrogant, so I want to kind of try to be in the middle. So I'm still working on that.
Got you. Yeah. I hear you. I really like how you described it. Came full circle where growing up, your family did not welcome like you showing like a sense of pride and accomplishment, but that's precisely what you need to do at these auditions and interviews to let folks know and like punch up and dial up, like identify that these are the the accomplishments and credits. So I see.
So I need to kind of work on that stuff, just confidence. Yeah.
Gotcha. The United States needs to grow the mental health like resources, and we as a society need to break the stigma against it, so we can have these kinds of conversations more openly, and then subsequently get people the resources they need.
It's just going to help. Like, people don't understand that it's going to help everyone. Like, if more people seek mental health treatment, it's going to benefit not just them, it's going to benefit their family, their kids, their partner or future partner. Like, it's not just them getting the help, it's going to help benefit society, It's going to help them with work. Absolutely. And you shouldn't like shun someone because they said they're going to therapy, or look at them in a weird way. It's just, people take care of their physical health by going to the doctor. That's fine. So why is it weird for someone to take care of their mental health? It should just be like, okay, whatever. You went to therapy, cool. It's not like, oh my gosh, you went to therapy. Like, it's not. It shouldn't be a big deal. Absolutely.
With mental health, the individual gets better, and then that improves with relationships, and then that grows outwards. I would hope that creates like a foster a more welcoming environment for artists and creatives. So, I hope that comes full circle one day. So
yeah, we just have to keep doing it. Hopefully we can inspire the future generation to like change things.
Yes, for sure. This has been a phenomenal experience. And I will include all of Anaïs's information, like social media, all of her YouTube channels, and all of her platforms in the caption.
So many. I'm so sorry.
Oh no, don't apologize. I'm like never anywhere near close to like the character limit for the YouTube caption, so I feel like I want to make better use of them and like fill up the caption space. So thank you so much, Anaïs. It's a huge pleasure having you.
Thank you so much. And everyone, hopefully you'll check out Mudit's episode on my podcast, because it was a really cool episode. Yes.